Hey there, Ted Laxonen, the Country Thinker here to bring you episode 15 of The Eagle Has Crashed. Now, I want to apologize for getting this put together a day late, but it was Mother's Day weekend, and I chose to spend most of the weekend with my family. So, unfortunately, I'm a little late, but hopefully all the rest of you had a good time with your family too. So, without further ado, let's get to October of 2029, the second half of The Eagle Has Crashed. Dylan Johansen was sitting at the kitchen table, working at his laptop with a half-eaten sandwich on a plate beside him. The doorbell rang. He got up, walked down the tile hallway, and opened up the front door. There was a gray-haired man in khaki pants and a medium blue Oxford standing on the concrete stoop. "Dylan Johansen," the man said through the glass storm door. "Yes, it is. What can I do for you?" The man pulled a manila envelope out from under his arm. "I've got some papers for you. Since you're a lawyer, I'm hoping you won't give me too much trouble." "Are they legal papers?" "Yes, sir." Dylan opened the glass door, stepped out, and extended his hand. The process server handed him the envelope. "Thank you," said Dylan. "Never had anyone thank me before," the server said with a smile. "Well, I probably won't like what's inside, but I don't see any reason to kill the messenger." "I wish more people thought like you," the server said. "Good day, Mr. Johansen." He turned and headed down the brick sidewalk. Dylan held up the envelope and scowled. What the heck is this all about? An hour later, Dylan was sitting alone at a round, heavy wooden table at a trendy brew pub in the German village section of Columbus when he saw the slender silhouette of his wife appear at the entry. A hostess motioned in his direction, and Dylan set down his mug of porter and stood up. Benny walked over, gave him a peck on the cheek, and took the seat beside him. She picked up a heavy, leather-bound menu and opened it. "What are you having for lunch?" "I already ate," he said. She furrowed her brow, shadowing her reclusive eyes. Sweetie, you asked me to meet you for lunch, didn't you?" "Yes, I did." Dylan reached into the black leather briefcase on the floor beside his chair and pulled out a thick, stapled document. He handed it to Benny, who flipped through it quickly. Benny raised her eyebrows. "They want to disbar you?" Dylan took a swig of beer as the waitress arrived. "Anything for you, ma'am?" the perky college-aged server asked. Benny brushed her long blonde hair to the side and looked up. "A glass of the house Pinot Noir, please." The waitress nodded and disappeared. Benny turned back to Dylan, who was sitting with the expressionless discipline of a soldier. "All right, what's the gist of this?" she asked. "They say I've degraded the legal profession and undermined its capacity to serve the community because of my legal reform activism." Benny's dark eyes twinkled. "Well, darling, you have said that lawyers have destroyed the country." "The facts are on my side." She took a deep breath. "Do you think your reform bill is dead because of this?" He nodded. Benny rubbed her lips to conceal a smile. Dylan scowled. "You aren't happy about this, are you?" "Actually, I am." "What the hell?" "Darling, you almost got killed when that guy sabotaged your brakes. The same guy threatened to kill me and the kids. It all comes down to your legal reform, and if your bill is dead, the guy disappears." She shrugged. "I'm sorry, but as much as I respect what you're trying to do, you and the kids come first." She could see his anger boiling as the waitress delivered the glass of wine. There were only three things that could elicit an emotional response from the rock-steady Dylan Johansen: his family, his country, and the legal industry. He was about to lose his ability to do anything about the third. "Listen, Dylan," she said as he continued to stew. "We've been through this before. I've wanted you to give up on legal reform since that guy came after me in the parking garage." "You're right, we've been through this before, but I can protect you and the kids." He crossed his arms. "I'm not intimidated by that coward." Why is it men think they're superheroes, Benny thought. Especially military men. That guy isn't a coward. He's a killer. She sighed. "All right, just for argument's sake, would they drop the disbarment if you agreed to stop with legal reform?" He shook his head. "No way. They know I'll come back eventually." They're probably right about that, she thought. Benny leaned back and ran a hand through her long hair. I don't know what else to say, Dylan, but I'm going to rest easier tonight. Dylan looked down to the tan froth of his mug of porter. God, this sucks, she thought. I know he thinks he can do it all, but he can't. That guy was going to hurt us if Dylan didn't quit with legal reform, and now the bar has fixed the problem. There are going to be a few cold nights, but it'll be worth it if we're all safe. She leaned forward and placed her hands on top of his. Everything's going to work out fine, my love. You'll see. Dylan refused to lift his eyes. Herm Stanbaugh sat in the cab of his 1982 John Deere tractor, plowing the moist October soil that was softened just enough by a 3-day drizzly spell to let the plow penetrate the heavy clay soil in preparation for a planting of winter wheat. As he plowed, he intently followed the line between the chunky brown plowed earth and the line of shin-high corn stalks. He was absorbed in his instinctive meditative task when a nail on the chalkboard screech from the plow penetrated the cab. The tractor slowed slightly, sending him lurching forward. Stanbaugh put the tractor into park and closed his deep-set brown eyes. He shook his head slightly and sighed. He opened the cab door and hopped down to the cool earth in his scuffed and worn leather boots, landing in a brown patch of weeds. The broad-shouldered farmer walked to the back of the plow and scanned the odd, square-toothed, elliptical-shaped plow discs until he spotted the offending rock lodged between two of the steel blades. He shook his head again and ran his hand through his neatly combed gray hair. Herm Stanbaugh, he said aloud, you spend more time picking rocks out of this newfangled piece of junk than you do farming. He kneeled down in front of the wedged, mud-covered rock. Earth-friendly, my butt. This is what you get when Republicans and big business stick their noses into farming. You have to buy new, overpriced equipment that ain't worth a lick and don't do nothing to help the environment. Stanbaugh grabbed a hold of the rock with his hands that showed the abuse of half a century of farming. He tugged forcefully, but his quarry didn't budge. He wiped his brow with the back of his forearm and yanked again with no success. The farmer clenched his stocky jaw and scowled. I ain't got time for this, he muttered. He pulled his right hand back and thumped the stone with the heel of his palm. He didn't hit it squarely, and the force of his blow bounced his open hand into the squarish teeth of the disc behind. Damn it, he howled. He looked at his hand and saw a deep cut that angled across his palm. Crimson speckles of blood began to dot the white gash. Stanbaugh stood up abruptly and stomped on the rock with his right heel. The stone did not budge, and his left heel slipped forward. The old farmer fell backward onto the newly plowed earth, caking his back with mud. He scrambled to a sitting position. He held up his hand and examined the growing stream of blood as it flowed through the mud on his hand. Stanbaugh refocused his scowl on the immovable rock lodged between the state-mandated plow discs. Once again, Big Brother had come to the farm to make Stanbaugh's life miserable. What the hell has this country come to? He asked the stone. It was 8 in the evening in late October, and the clear night sky speckled frost on the windshield of a pickup truck backed up to a roll-up door on the side of the North Fab facility. The truck had 3 welding machines in back, along with several large rolls of MIG welding wire. To the right of the entry, the paint on the aluminum siding was still charred and chipped from the truck burning incident the previous summer. Nate was in a dark blue golf shirt, ignoring the chill as he shook the hand of his foreman. Cassie stood behind in a gray sweatshirt with her arms wrapped tightly around her chest. Well, Tim, I hope you get a lot of good use out of that equipment, Nate said. The tall redhead looked down to the gravel lot and shook his head. You know, I always figured I'd retire from North Fab just like Dad did. I can't believe this place is closing. Ah, don't sweat it, Chief, Nate said as he slapped Tim on the shoulder. He pulled up his sagging jeans. Times change, you know. You just gotta roll with them. Are you serious that it doesn't bother you at all? Nate squinted one eye and held his hands out. Well, it did at first, but I've gotten over it. Leave it to my self-described hard-ass to convince himself that closing a third-generation family business is just business, Cassie thought. Do you think you'll stay in the fab business? Tim asked. North closed his eyes, turned his head to the side, and made the no good signal of a referee after a missed field goal attempt. Hell no, man. I'm moving on to better things. Really? Tim said, lifting a bushy red eyebrow. What? I don't know yet. Nate hoisted up his jeans again. But you can bet it'll be different. He slapped Tim on the shoulder once more. But don't you worry about old Nate. I'll figure out something. I always do. And remember, he pointed at his foreman, if you need anyone to vouch for you, bank, supply house, whatever, let me know, and I'll make sure they know they're dealing with a good man. Tim stepped forward and surprised Nate with a hug. Nate relented and then slapped the taller, leaner man on the back like he was burping a baby elephant. The two men stepped back from the embrace. Thanks, Nate, Tim said. Molly's real worried about my going out on my own, especially with things kind of tough right now. I can use every bit of good news I can give her. Yeah, and speaking of that, you ought to get home to that sweet girl and your little ones instead of wasting your time shooting the breeze with your old boss. I'm going to have a hard time getting used to saying that, Nate. It won't take long, trust me. And thank you again for all your hard work over the years. Yes, thank you, Tim, Cassie said, emerging from behind her husband. She and Tim hugged, and when they released their embrace, Tim turned to his truck without looking back toward Nate. Cassie had tears running down her plump cheeks. Tim fired the engine of his truck, and a cloud of steam and exhaust rumbled from the rusting tailpipe. The red brake lights softened, and the truck rolled across the gravel, around the end of North Fab, and out of sight. Well, Nate said, let's shut her down and head on home. Don't you even feel a little sad, Nate? She asked as she stepped forward to give him a hug. He handed her his vehicle keys and turned away. It's just business, honey. That's the way it goes. He pulled up his jeans again. Why don't you get the old rig warmed up while I turn out the lights? Cassie stood with the keys in her hand and shook her head. You can't fool me, you old teddy bear. I know this is tearing you up inside. She was right, and even though closing North Fab was the correct decision, she knew he had a tank full of anger and sadness stored up inside. In the upcoming months, Cassie would have to poke a little here and prod a little there to get Nate to vent emotions one puff at a time. If she didn't, her teddy bear would be a ticking emotional time bomb. Nate dismissed her with a wave without looking. He walked through the roll-up door and pushed the button. The door lowered with a clacka-clacka-clacka. I'll be right out, he hollered. Once the door closed, he looked around the North Fab plant. A few empty pallets and busted-up cardboard boxes were sprinkled about on the concrete floor that had been jam-packed with steel fabrication equipment for 60 years. The hollow emptiness sent a chill down his spine, so he turned and headed toward the foreman's room. He flipped a bank of switches, and the lights of the North Fab manufacturing facility went out. Although he did not need it, a lit exit sign showed him the way to the offices. Nate crossed through Cassie's reception and accounting area without looking over to his office. He grabbed a windbreaker from a coat hook. As he opened the front door, he glanced at an aerial photograph of the North Fab facility hanging on the plain white wall dated 1972. For a moment he thought, "You're a failure, Nate." He beat back the thought. Then, "You let your dad and grandpa down." He pushed that thought away too. "You let the bastards beat you." "Get the fuck out, I did not." In the back of his mind grew thoughts he didn't push aside. The deck was stacked against you, Nate. What could you do? This wasn't your fault. The government and the damn union ganged up on you. You are outnumbered. He breathed deep and studied the aerial photograph one last time. "Sorry, Grandpa," he muttered. "Times have changed." He pushed his way through the door and let it slam behind him. And that is the end of October of 2029 of The Eagle Has Crashed. Hopefully next week I will get the post up on time on Sunday instead of being a day late. I'll make every effort to do that, and hopefully everyone's enjoying this. And as always, if you'd like to purchase a copy, you can get it at my website, clearpeakpress.com, or through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, from the iTunes Store, the Sony Store, Smashwords, and other retailers. So, have a nice week, and we'll get back at the story coming up next Sunday.